my channel, fam knows. I hope everybody's doing well. I'm just sitting here. It's a Friday, a snowy Friday out here, trying to get some errands done. And some of the things some of the contents I will be speaking on my channel is about business and financing, and I just want to make sure that my viewers and my audience, that you guys have the knowledge that you need to be successful in every area of your life, whether it's spiritual, financial, mental. If it's something I think that's going to be a good content to put on my channel, I definitely will. Well, today I wanted to talk about life after bankruptcy. So this past year, I recently had to file bankruptcy, unfortunately. One, I had a house that it's a long story behind my house, but me and my mother had to end up walking away from. And so because she ended up doing it first, they decided they were going to come after me next for whatever was still owed on the house. So I ended up having to go ahead and do that to protect myself from being hit with that bill at this point in time that I just could not afford. And on top of it, I had a lot of other debts, medical debts that was haunting me, because my daughter, my last child, when I had her, she had to have 5 surgeries. And so many of her surgery procedures did not fall under my insurance. So they were sitting on my credit. Even though now, looking in hindsight, a lot of that I could have fought about it being on my credit and everything, and I could have just fought, period. So, power and knowledge is power, and knowing, what our rights are with our credit is extremely important. And I will say, this past year I learned a lot about how to maneuver things with my credit and getting things off my credit. So like I said, I had to do bankruptcy. So around the time that I had to do bankruptcy, I had a bad car accident and I lost my car. So many people were like, well, you're doing your bankruptcy anyway, just go ahead, let them take the car back, and you could just always go and pop and get another car. And I've seen people who have done bankruptcy in the past, and they were able to pop and just go get a vehicle with no problem. Well, a lot of folks have changed over the years. These banks are not lending like they used to. A lot of it has to do with our pandemic, and a lot of it has to do with over usage of bankruptcy. So these banks, where it used to be easy to just pop out and just go get another car, it isn't that easy, folks. It's not. I was with a vehicle for almost 9 months. 9 months without a car. I had to rent. I had to sometimes do Uber and Lyft. Sometimes, depending on what time of the day it was, I was able to get family members or friends to be able to take me to the store if I needed to go grocery shopping or whatever of that nature. But when it came down to when I moved out the metropolitan area and more out in the suburbs, that I had to get me rental cars. Rental cars in itself can be very expensive. With the pandemic, some of these rental car companies like Hertz and Avis, they ended up selling their fleets. So during the pandemic, thinking that people weren't going to rent because of the fact people weren't traveling like they had been. Well, with that being said, they did not have the amount of cars to be able to accommodate people. So when people did start traveling, there was a shortage on cars. So what did they do? Because the demand was there, but they didn't have the supply, they started boosting up the prices. So it became very expensive trying to rent a car every week. So me thinking, hey, so what can I do to kind of counteract the cost on that? So I started doing Uber, because with Uber and with Lyft, some of them do have programs, depending on your state, where you can actually get a car through them at a more discounted price. And usually what they do, they'll take it out the percentage of the money that you make for the week. So you pay your rental car first, and then anything you make after that goes in your pocket for what you make for the week. So I did that for a little bit, and but me, I don't know. I just started feeling like, do I really want to be out here doing Uber and stuff? I don't know if I really want to put strangers in a car with me that I don't know. And then it's just looking at the world and where things are at in our world right now. I just did not feel comfortable riding around with strangers in a car by myself. But that system kind of worked for a little bit. Then I found Turo. And Turo is an app that you can go on and download. And I think it took me one day to get approved with my driver's license and all that stuff. And I was able to start renting cars that way. And it just depends on the car that you want, and everything will depend on how much the person who is renting their car out for the day, because it's almost like a ride share. So Turo is almost like a ride share. So with Turo, it's you're borrowing somebody else's car, and you're borrowing it for a time period, whatever you guys agreed on. That, some people's cars I was able to borrow them for up to 2 weeks, and it wasn't that expensive. The nice thing about using Turo, once you are approved, it's not like with Hertz and Avis and Budget, where you have to put if you're using your debit card, because keep in mind, I had to do the bankruptcy. So any credit cards I had to went into my bankruptcy. So at that time, I could not go and just actively go out and get another credit card. So I had to use my debit card. So when you go to Budget, when they rent a car for you and you're using it with your debit card, and I believe it's Avis and Hertz also, they will do a credit check. They say it's a soft credit check, but it still comes up as an inquiry on your credit. And if you're trying to keep as many inquiries off your credit, you really don't want nobody running your credit like that. So, and depending on what your credit score, they say they'll take a 550, but a lot of times they want more than your score, higher than that, if they're going to rent to you, because they want to make sure that you're not going to be a risk factor in making sure that you're going to pay this car if anything happens. So the lower your score, the likelihood of you getting approved to rent one of their cars is slim to none. So with that being said, I went through Turo, because Turo does take debit cards, and they do not ask for a high-ass deposit. Whereas if you go to Avis, Hertz, and Budget, if you're using that debit card, guess what you're doing? You're putting down a high deposit on that car, on top of whatever it is that you have to pay for the days you have the car. And at that time, I needed a car for more than one day. So for a week, it's going to be over $1,600. I was able to go through Turo, and I got a car that I was able to rent for less than $300 for the week. So I did that for a while, until I was finally able to get a bank to approve me. Because that's another thing. With the bankruptcy, it wasn't a quick process because of the pandemic. Everything with the court system was backed up. So I wasn't able to get my appointment that quick. And then on top of it, once you do get the first, finish your court dates and you go through your trustees, as long as your trustees do not have issues with any of your debts, and your debtors do not try to come and say, hey, no, we're not going to work this out, we're not going to let her discharge this, we want her to pay this. If they don't contest anything, then usually after you meet with your trustee, it's a done deal. But if, for instance, with me, my attorney's assistant did not put everything into my bankruptcy like she was supposed to, because like when the car got repoed, she was supposed to put that in. She didn't do that. So we had to go back, they had to amend my paperwork, put that in, and then after that we had to re-meet with the trustee again, which was at least 2 weeks after that, our first trial and stuff. And after they did that, I was good to go, but I had to wait 60 days before my discharge. So in those 60 days, you still really can't do anything if you need to start going back out and seeking credit for whatever reasons. And so then after 60 days, if nobody disputes everything, the trustee's good, you will be discharged. But what I want people to know is that getting credit back after bankruptcy is not as easy as it, on certain things, is not as easy as it used to be. Because before, if they know, most of these car dealerships, if they know you're in a bankruptcy, they'll go ahead and put you through. But it's the banks now. They're not doing that anymore. They want to know the loan is discharged, and then a lot of times they want you now to put down such a high deposit down payment on the car that is almost like you might as well just go get yourself a little shooter just to get around until you get reestablish your credit so you can really get what you want. But even after the bankruptcy, I was having problems getting a car. Nobody wanted to give me a loan. Nobody. And it didn't matter how much I was going to, or if they did want to extend a loan, I had to put like $6,000-$7,000 down. And I'm like, if I had that kind of money to lay out like that, I just go get me a shooter right now and just sit and let my credit sit for a minute. Let me tell you, I really turned it over to God. And I really started praying over my finances. I started praying over this situation with my car, me and my debt, and making me a better steward over my money. And I'm going to tell you something. When I let it go and let God handle it, the day I stopped not feeling like I had to take control over the situation and I let it go, I was sitting there and I confessed that I need to let it go and let God and let him handle it. Boom, I got a phone call and I got approved for a 2022 Kia. So I was able to go pick that car up I think by that weekend, and I got my car. But that was a blessing. That was nothing but God, because everybody else was turning me down. Even for a old car, a car that was almost 3-4 years old, I was getting turned down. So not to say that filing bankruptcy is a bad thing, because sometimes you get in a situation you have to, but I just want people to be realistic. That is not an easy fix. You can reestablish your credit. You can start moving to get things, but I would say do it at a slow pace, because you are still going to get where people are going to charge you high APRs, which is your annual percentage rates on whatever the money you borrow. So you're going to spend a lot. They are going to give you a high APR on everything. And also, like now, I'm trying to work on my credit. So since the bankruptcy, I've been making sure that everything is paid on time. If it's something I know I cannot pay on time, I will call them and make a payment arrangement. That is easier to do than you not getting in touch with your debt people and making some type of arrangements. Because if you're making arrangements and they're taking those settlements, those payments from you, they have to work, they're entitled now to work with you. And that saves your credit. Also, I've had to learn to be realistic about my spending. I can't be out here spending like I have been, I just couldn't. I had to be more realistic about my spending and what I'm spending. So I actually sat down after the bankruptcy. I got a budget book. With my budget book, and I'll show that to you guys the next time we're going to talk, because it's going to be an ongoing talk. And I'll show you the budget book that I came up with, and it's really cool. It's from Fox, and I'm going to say Foxfire or something like that, but I'm going to show it to you guys. And one thing, it has a mind map, and I think mind map is so cool, because with mind mapping, it really lets you lay out and map out how you're going to approach certain situations. So I really thought that was so cool. And then it made me break down what were the steps I was going to take to keep myself out of debt and to start saving money. So it really made me start thinking, because I wasn't thinking in those frames. All I'm thinking about, okay, let me write down what my expenses each month and go from there. So it really got me looking at my money and how I'm working with my money each month in a different way. Then, of course, it has the budget and breaking it down, when things are due, what you're paying. And then you have a section in the book where you actually write down each thing that you're spending your money on each day. So if you going and getting your nails done, you going and getting your lashes and all that stuff, every time that you make an expense, you want to journal that in the journal. So then at the end of the month, what you can do is do some self-reflection and being able to see exactly where you're spending a lot of your money at. And then that way, if you could see it, guess what you're going to do? It'll start making you be more accountable about what your money, how you're spending your money, and where you're spending it at. And then it's a section in the book that teaches you about saving and stuff. And see, those were not things that I was ever taught. And those weren't things that I wasn't even looking at when it became, when it came to my money. And I just said I want to get at a point in my life where money doesn't scare me. And these bills don't scare me, that I know that that's part of life. We're going to have bills, and if you want to live a certain way, you're going to have bills, but I don't want to be scared with my bills to the point that I don't want to open my mail. I don't want to answer my phone, and I don't want to address it. And also, as far as being accountable on how you're spending your money, I think a lot of times people are not accountable to how they're spending their money. So I think the accountability part is so key, because if you know how you're spending your money, you're going to know how you're going to direct your money and everything. So one thing I say is set yourself up a budget each month. Make sure it's a realistic budget that you know that you will be able to maintain each month. And I would also suggest that you write down your expenses. It don't have to necessarily be every day, but I think for me, that works for me, because then it keeps me more mindful about what I'm spending my money on. So you have to do what's best for you. But writing your expenses down, pulling up your bank statements, looking over what highlighting all your non-essential. Non-essential is like your shopping. I wouldn't even say household stuff, because you're going to need household stuff. You're going to need laundry detergent. You're going to need soap and stuff like that to keep your butt clean. So things like that, those are essential things. Your rent, that's essential. Your car note, those are essential things. Even down to gas, putting in your car, that's essential, because if you didn't put gas in your car, guess what? You ain't going nowhere. So those are essential things. Non-essential things is your shopping habits. Going and feeling like today you need a Louis Vuitton bag. That's a non-essential. And that is more of a luxury item that you get when everything else is good and you got money saved up. This is another thing. And this is a thing I stress to my girls all the time. Being financially independent is so key to being, your own person. Ladies, even though we know we want to have stuff and nice stuff and our homes looking nice, we looking nice, and having those nice little Chanel bags and stuff, if you can afford a Chanel bag, you should have 6 months of your income saved up in your savings account at all times. 6 months of not even your income, 6 months of what you spend each month in your household. So if you can get a Chanel bag, and depending on the price of a Chanel bag, there's no reason why most people do not have 6 months of what their overhead is each month and saved up in their savings account. Come on, let's be realistic. I sit here, I got my Dooney and Burke. I'm good with that. When there was a time, I did have Louis Vuitton and all that, because that was my bag. But I'm going to tell you, today, I go get me a Coach bag. I'll get me an MK. I'll go get me a Dooney and Burke bag. Because I can't rationalize that in my head, spending $300, more than $300 on a bag. And right now, I'm renting. I don't have a house. And I need to save back up so I can have a house again. So, I'm just saying, be realistic about how you are spending. Once again, it goes back to being accountable. Accountability is key in everything you do in your life. Everything. But yes, we should always have 6 months or whatever your overhead is. So that's part of budgeting. So you sit down, figure out what is it that is an essential spending in your house, and calculate all of that. If you spend over $4,000 to $5,000, let's say $5,000, each month in your household. Calculate that, times that by 6 for the 6 months. That's what? $30,000 that you should have in your savings account at any given time. So if anything happens, like when we had this pandemic and people have lost their jobs behind it, people got furloughed at work and their hours were cut, and depending on what their job requirements were with unemployment, some people didn't get unemployment. Some people just did not have any money coming in whatsoever. And depending on what you fall under the federal poverty lines will depend whether or not you even qualify for any type of DHD or anything like that. So, or public assistance. Let me say that, because every state is different. So, that's why it's so important. We have to take accountability about our spending. We have to take accountability to how we're living from day to day. And we have to take accountability about being financially independent. We can't rely on other people. So that's just some of the things I just wanted to talk to you guys about as far as life after bankruptcy. So this is a part 1. I'll probably do a part 2. Because right now my thing I'm working on is getting my credit up. Like I had stated, since the bankruptcy, my credit, it was super low. I didn't even know it could get that low. But I've been able to get my credit up almost 250 points since the bankruptcy, like I said. And that's been a combination of making sure I've been keeping my bills paid on time. I'm not going out here making no new debts. The debts that I have, I'm trying to make sure that they're getting paid on time. When I got the car, because I had to take what I could at the time, because to get us out of the situation, me and my daughter out of the situation of us not having a car, I had to take a high APR. My APR on my car was almost 26%. I mean, if you want around a 25.5, it was 26%. So, I've had the car now almost 8 months, something like that. And it's going on 8 months now. And I was able to get the car refinanced. And I was able to get my financing down to almost, it was 13.9%. So look, I got a good half of that off of me. My car payments were $606 a month on my vehicle. I was able to get my car payments down to $426. Then that's still high, but for what I was paying initially to what I'm going to be paying now on this car, that's a lot more reachable than what I had been paying, because I've been making sure my car insurance has been getting paid on time. That even dropped. So, it is perks to making sure that you're paying your bills on time, So, that's key coming out of a bankruptcy. Making sure that you are not making more debt for yourself than you can afford. Look at the lessons to what got you in debt to begin with and try not to repeat them, And if you need to seek out a financial advisor or start looking at some of these financial videos about how to keep yourself out of debt, and I think that's going to keep you on the right path of not going backwards, because you got to realize once you file bankruptcy, you can't do it again for at least 7 to 10 years. And they're strict on that. And if they have their way, they're going to increase the time frame it is to when you can file it. Another thing about filing bankruptcy, and I really stress this to people, do it as a last resort, not your first resort to get yourself out of debt, because once you do it, it is on your credit for 7 to 10 years, and it's down as a derogatory mark on your credit. So if that's something that you can hold off and do, and you can make arrangements with your bills, I would suggest that. But if you're just at a space that is becoming overwhelming and it's too much, and you just don't have enough money coming in to afford your bills at this time, and you're going to lose more than you're going to be able to get out of the hole that you're in, then yeah, maybe bankruptcy is the route you may need to go at this point in time. And like I said, if you are at that point that look at all your options to know what it is you can do once the bankruptcy is over, and how life is going to be after bankruptcy. 2, know the difference between the two different bankruptcies, because you have chapter 13 and you have 7, and it is a big difference. Chapter 7, you are totally liquidating all your debts. So everything that you just cannot afford, you're going to put that in bankruptcy, and it gets liquidated and discharged off you, and you are no longer responsible for paying it. With chapter 13, that is more of a payment type situation. So if you actually have a home and you don't want your home going back to the bank, then chapter 13 might be the case. For instance, you also people don't realize, even with 7, if you have a car and you're making the car payments on time and you want to keep your car, there are waivers that you can put in place, but you have to do it before you go in to actually see the trustee. There's waivers you can put in place to keep you from not having the car being repossessed and taken back from you. And sometimes while you're in the bankruptcy, if you got the right lawyer, they might even be able to bring those payments down sometimes. And that's more in 13. They can work with that, where they can get the payments reduced so it's more manageable for you. So sometimes 13 might be better, especially when you don't want to liquidate everything and you still want to keep certain things. So like, say for instance, you have a house and you know that you might be facing foreclosure and you still want to keep your house, then 13 might work better for you, because they can get those payments reduced on your house and work something out with the bank so you're able to still maintain and keep your house and stuff. I'm sitting in the car and I'm hearing ice and stuff. I didn't know what was that. So I'm sorry. But just look at all your options. And that's why when you decide to do it, definitely sit down and talk to somebody who is knowledgeable and knows the law about bankruptcy, and really knows what your situation is and what's going to be feasible for your particular situation, because everybody's situation is different, and doing bankruptcy is not like a cookie cutter. Everything is, everybody's going to fit the same mold. No, you have to see what's going to be best for you in your situation. Unfortunately for me, doing 7 was the best route at that time for me to just get myself a clean break and a fresh start. And you can get a house. People think that you can't get a house after bankruptcy and that you got to settle with living in an apartment or whatever. No, you can get a house. And we'll discuss that more in our next video that I talk about with life after bankruptcy. But but you can definitely get a house. It's just a waiting period, and then a lot of times you might have to put down a higher down payment with purchasing a house, because of the fact, once again, you have to show to the bank you may still be a risk factor to them. Just because you might have first year or two coming out of bankruptcy, you've been doing well with your credit, they still want to make sure that you're not going to be a liability where they lose money. So that might be another reason sometimes with some of these bank loans, you're going to have to come up with more money. Even like I said, with a car, you may have to come up with more money. Whereas somebody who has over 700, and they're walking in there with no credit, never had any credit issues, never had to file bankruptcy, and they could just go in there, zero down, and walk out with a car. You might not be in that situation after a bankruptcy. So you would have just be realistic about what you're working with. You still, and then with credit cards, I personally am not rushing to get a credit card right now, because like I said, a lot of the offers, the APRs are really still extremely high for me. So that's not an option at this point in time for me. I don't want a credit card. Eventually I will, once I want the banks to start seeing, oh, she's been paying her bills on time. She's been doing this. Now, I did take like 2 personal loans to knock off some debts that I did not put in my bankruptcy. So with those 2 personal loans, that was another reason would help increase my credit score by over 200 points since the bankruptcy. So, like I said, you just gotta see what's gonna work for you. Two, you don't want to put yourself back in debt again, because if you do bankruptcy, gotta keep it in your mind. Can't do it again for another 7 to 10 years. So that's that for today, guys. That was on my spirit. I just wanted to put that out there. Like I said, we'll have some conversations about more conversation about life after bankruptcy, and then other things I would like to talk about will be on my channel about business and financing and stuff like that, because I do strategic planning and business development. I do have a company, so you can find that information, my website, in the description and stuff. And if you guys ever need a business plan or anything like that, just let me, hit me up. I'm your girl for it. I can do your business plan, any strategizing to get your business started. I can help you with that as well. But yeah, that I hope you guys well. I hope this information today was great. If you like what you heard, please put something down in the comment box. Hit the subscribe button, share if you know somebody who might be going through the same situation and just want to hear somebody else's feedback of how they got through the situation, and hit that like button if you like the content today. I will see you guys again. Take care and love you. Bye.